I'm Mairead.
Hi, I'm Tilly.
Hi, I'm Phoebe.
And we're going to talk about mental illness for Mental Health Awareness Day. So we've got some questions we're each going to answer about the mental illness we experience, and first we'll introduce ourselves. So we all know each other from going to the same high school in North Wales. I grew up in Rhyl and I'm now a student in Leeds. I have OCD and that's what I'm going to be raising awareness for today. Tilly?
So I'm from St Asaph originally, but now I live in Liverpool. I'm a student at John Moores. I have borderline personality disorder, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm
the same. I grew up in North Wales, Rhyl. I work in hospitality, so I work in bars both in Rhyl and in Liverpool, so I'm all about the place. And I have anxiety and depression, which is what I'll be raising awareness on today.
Cool. So our first question is, how would you describe your mental illness or your experience of it? So I'll go first. So OCD is characterized by intrusive thoughts, so obsessions and compulsions. So they're like internal or external actions that alleviate the anxiety short term, but in the long run they like prolong the cycle because they confirm to the brain that the thoughts are dangerous and that the anxiety is like needed and that the compulsion is needed. So it just like prolongs the cycle. Common intrusive thoughts include like fear of harming or like being violent towards like loved ones, sexual or like blasphemous intrusive thoughts, dirt, germs, contamination. They're more like the obvious ones. But these intrusive thoughts are all like ego dystonic, so they're like the opposite to what a person values and cares about, and opposite to their actions. They'd never act on them, and that's why it's so distressing for like the sufferer to have them. So everyone gets these intrusive thoughts, but the people with OCD like get them more extremely and more graphically because they're so anxious because of them, and the brain goes into like fight or flight. So when you get the intrusive thought, your brain's like, like we need to fight this thought, like this is so bad, this means you're a bad person, this is a reflection of you. So then you do the compulsions, and on TV these are always shown as being like obviously the intrusive thought's not even shown, and then people are just shown to be like cleaning their shit and stuff, but like cleaning their room, but it's not that. Like for me anyway, it's always been like internal, so I've been like ruminating about the thoughts, like why would I think that, and that just prolongs the cycle. But I have to like think over past memories to check I'm not like a bad person, and like maybe reassurance seek from others. It's estimated that around 1.2% of the population have it, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, age, cultural, social background. And there's no one reason for OCD. It's a mixture of genetic, emotional, environmental factors. And according to the World Health Organization, it's one of the top 10 most disabling illnesses worldwide, like physical or mental. But like not many people know this. It's such like I think it's such a stigmatized thing that I didn't even know I had because of the misconceptions. So yeah, what about you, Tilly?
Okay, so BPD, it's a personality disorder which affects your behaviours, your relationship with other people and your thought patterns. So there's quite a few symptoms. My main ones that I personally suffer with would be like fear of abandonment, unstable identity, being impulsive, so that could be like substance abuse or reckless spending. So like reckless spending, I'm really bad for it. Like sometimes I'll just be like, I'll get paid and I'm like, is it time to spend £600 to go to Swansea for the week? And everyone's like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, that is a bad idea. That's fine. Intense and quick mood swings, unstable relationships, and then self-harm and attempting suicide. So like one of the symptoms of BPD is self-harming and attempting suicide because it happens so often. 1 in 10 people with BPD will kill themselves. Like that's how they'll die, through suicide. It's a really, really common thing to do. I've tried to do it a few times when I was younger, but not so much now. there's a few other symptoms, but they're the ones that I experience most. There's a lot of it's a very intense and unstable disorder. Like, that just sums it up perfectly. The way that I would describe it is kind of like if you had a big jar of like hundreds and thousands and you just shook them like this constantly. Yeah, that's what it feels like in my brain. It's just like, constant thoughts. Like, it's heavy. So yeah, I got diagnosed with it a few years ago. But it was first mentioned to me when I was about 16 because I was going a bit off the rails. I mentioned before that I used to have quite bad problem with prescription drugs. So yeah, it's just a horrible thing to live with, really. It's very, very intense. It's very horrible, but at the same time, like, I think it can bring some good because I'm very, very sensitive, very compassionate, like very highly empathetic and stuff like that. And like also very creative. I can write poems like this. They're not very good, but I can write them, so it's fine. So yeah, that's what it's like.
Yeah. And what about you, Phoebe?
Okay, so with my anxiety, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, and it's not always prominent either. Some days I can conquer the world and do whatever. I think most people know me as to be quite a bubbly and out there person, but then there's days where I'm waking up with heart palpitations. I don't want to leave the house. I'm just too worried about me doing something wrong that'll be a domino effect to like something that is nothing to do with me, but I will make up dots in my head and connect them and come up with, all right, okay, I shouldn't leave the house today because something bad's going to happen. If I'm out and anxiety kind of takes over, it could be a panic attack. In the more early stages of me realizing that I was probably developing anxiety, it was very hysterical panic attacks where I had to go home immediately. Like, it was a big hoo-ha. If it was in public, it was quite a big show, to be honest. But then I slowly realized that I was experiencing feelings that they're panic attacks as well, but it's just not the big show that I thought it had to be in order to be a panic attack. I could be having a conversation with someone and my heart is like racing, my mind's all over the place, and I have to just like take a few seconds to try and calm myself down. In other times it could be me being physically sick, which is what I never really understood, like on films or like in TV shows when people got nervous and they threw up. I never understood that because I'd never experienced that. But then now, more recently, that's starting to become the go-to for my body when I'm feeling anxious. It is to throw up. And then when that comes like hand in hand with depression, my eating patterns are all over the place. Sometimes I'll comfort eat, but at the moment, I don't really have much of an appetite, especially when you get, if you do get put on some medication. I've been on and off medication for years, and I always seem to think that's the answer when I'm not on them, and then I get them and I remember why I stopped taking them. Recently, I started taking them again, and one of the side effects in your like first week is nausea, like loss of appetite and everything. So I experienced all of that. Then unfortunately I caught coronavirus, so I lost all my sense of taste. So I'm eating right now, I'm not really too fussed on it. So then when I get anxious and I'm throwing up, it's very painful because there's nothing there for me to throw up, but I can't sleep until I get whatever my body thinks I need to get out. So it is having both of them like battle each other is quite a journey. With the depression, it's more like feelings of helplessness, a lot of lack of self-worth. My brain will convince me that I'm not deserving of nice things or nice experiences or nice relationships. It's frustrating because it will take a situation that's maybe a minor thing in someone else's life. It'll just catapult it like 100 times, and I'll sit there and I'll stay in bed all day and I'll think about everything I said, everything I didn't say, what I should have said, maybe if I should have worded something a bit differently, and I'll fixate on it for the whole day, and I won't be able to concentrate on absolutely anything else. Yeah, that's how they kind of manifest within me. It's just a lot of internal like hate towards myself, and me feeling like I'm not deserving of like nice things or nice experiences, or that I'm the root to every problem that I see around me. It's kind of a two-mind thing, because on one hand I know that that's not the case, but then my brain is constantly telling me, so it's just in a conflict a lot. So yeah, that's
Yeah, no, that literally just reminded me of like something with OCD as well. Like you know that you kind of know like deep down, maybe like 1% that the thought like isn't real. So you've got like your rationality, but then so much of like the anxiety feels really, really irrational because it's just there anyway, even though you know it's not true. The thought, the body just like acts like it is and just like battles against you. So it's like this constant battle between like your actual like self and then all of this like anxiety and like emotion and thought. Yeah, it's difficult, but like what the second question we received is like, what are the biggest misconceptions or misunderstandings and stigma surrounding the mental illness you experience? So for me, that it's that OCD is like a personality trait, a quirk, an adjective. Like a lot of people are always saying like, oh, I'm so OCD, or like they're a little bit OCD about that. And like on its own, that might seem harmless, but it literally was the reason I suffered in silence for so many years, and so many people do, because they think it's like this, yeah, this like cleanliness fetish thing that's like just about this external thing, when actually it's about being riddled with like this guilt and shame about things you haven't even done and you wouldn't ever even do, but that are just like bad things to do, like taboos. So I think that, yeah, that kind of that stereotype is really, really damaging. And yeah, it adds to the whole stigma. And that's even in the medical world as well. Like there's quite a bit of misunderstanding on like the GP nurse level. Like I would go to the doctors and be like, you know, I didn't know what it was I had. I'd just be like, this is, I wouldn't go into the thoughts obviously, but I'd just say like, you know, it was usually the depression and stuff that I was feeling because of it. And they just didn't ever really know. So I think there's a lot of room to be, you know, move forward with that. I feel like the whole disorder is really just stigmatized and misunderstood altogether, especially because of the media portrayals and just like the language surrounding it. Like, yeah. What about you, Tilly?
Well, I feel the exact same way. BPD is like the queen of stigmatized mental illnesses. Say the biggest one that like really grates me is like that we're all these evil manipulative horrors, which isn't true. Obviously, like you can have BPD and be abusive, but having BPD doesn't make you abusive. It's not like some thing where it's like, oh yeah, 80% of people with BPD actually are really abusive. Like that's just not a thing. We're much less likely to be abusive and more likely to be abused, because when you think of like the cocktail of symptoms that we have, we're like the perfect victim. Like we've got a really unstable identity, so we'll believe anything someone we love will tell us. We're really, really scared of abandonment, so we're unlikely to leave a relationship. Got really, really low self-esteem. What else was there? We're really, really highly sensitive. So especially like this is 100% in my case, like you can rationalize every bad thing someone does to you because you're like, oh, but they also had a shit childhood, or they also did this, or they did that. And it's like with all of these symptoms, and also the fact that you're very highly emotional, yeah, so you can say it's really easy for you to be gaslit, because you can be like, oh, I got upset by this thing, and then the person will be like, yeah, but you get emotional about everything, and then you're like, yeah, he's so right, like I am clearly the problem. That's the thing. So that really annoys me. Like I think a lot of people think we're manipulative because we tend to jump to the whole like the minor inconvenience will be like, I'm gonna kill myself, like I'm gonna kill myself. But that is just kind of a snippet of the wider problem that goes on in your head, or at least for me that is. Like my natural state, this is depressing, but we're talking about mental illness, so my natural state is just wanting to kill myself. Like every day I have to find a reason not to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's never like oh, I've had a really shit day, so I'm gonna kill myself. It's more of like I wake up and I have to be like, right, time to find reasons to stay alive, which sounds like really over dramatic, but that is what it's like. You just have to choose not to do it every single day, which it gets a bit easier with time, but it's still like on a particularly hard day, you are just like, it's like a kind of ambivalence towards life, I think, or at least in my experience, that's what it's like. So yeah, I think that's why people tend to think we're manipulative, because we'll be like, I'm going to kill myself, but it's genuine, a cry for help. It's not I'm not really, I just want you to stay with me. It's like an actual, I will do it. So I think that's where that comes from. But yeah, I think that is the biggest thing. I just think people always think we're really evil and manipulative, when in reality we're like just really sensitive, impulsive, and extremely emotional. I think that's...
Do you think that's just like a general like people regularly just like misconceive BPD like that, or is it even in the medical world? Like if you went to a GP to begin with when you like first had symptoms, were they even quite stigmatizing and misunderstanding?
Yeah, 100%. Like psychiatry as a whole is really, really stigmatizing of BPD. I've got a friend who has every single symptom. She went to the doctor and she was like, I think I have this, and they were like, no, you can't have it, you're too nice.
Oh my god.
And like they refused to give me the diagnosis for ages, because they were like, oh, like it will affect future prospects, and like if you go to the hospital, if they know that you have BPD, they'll think you're faking it, like whatever you have, because BPD is like, you're an attention seeker, blah blah blah, which to be fair, a lot of us probably are, but we need that attention. Do you know what I mean? I'm an attention seeker probably, but I need it. Like I thrive on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely a problem in psychiatric world with stigma.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
And what about you, Phoebe?
I definitely feel like I can relate to what Tilly was just saying with obviously we've both had experiences with like suicide attempts in the past, and it's almost as if it's like the first defense, like, oh, this has just happened, oh, I'm gonna do it, because it's like, how many of these little things, these little minor inconveniences are gonna happen before, like, I'll sit there in bed like, I didn't ask to be here, and then now I'm here and I feel like shit. Why am I not allowed to just go? Like, it's frustrating if you look at it black and white, and then you start thinking that the guilt comes in of, oh, I literally picked on my mum or like my best friends and like what it would do. Then my depression comes in and is like, no, they wouldn't care. Like, they get over it, it's fine. So it's so easy to develop right, okay, I feel really shit today, so that's just it's the easy. And I think one of the stigmas is that I'm so open with speaking about it. If other people are comfortable with me being so, it can be quite vulgar. Like, I'll just say I'm quite graphic, because to me it's what I live every day. Like, it's not a big thing. If I have a thought in my head saying I want to kill myself, that's normal. That's normal. And I think I'm not saying let's normalize everyone wanting to kill themselves. However, it's not to someone that doesn't have them thoughts, it's, oh my god, I can't believe you just said that. But to me, it's my first defense. Like, life isn't going how I want it to go.
Yeah.
See in a bit, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's knowing, like, you have this feeling, like, no matter how long I am on earth, I know how I'm going to die, and it's going to be because I'm going to do it to myself, and that's just in the back of your head constantly. But the main stigmas, I think, around depression are probably that people can't function, people are lazy, it's just they've got a poor outlook on life. They've been through a few hardships and they're a bit down. That all could be a factor, but it's it's literally a chemical imbalance in your brain. Like, and I don't think people understand that. Like, the medication that gets prescribed to me, it's to fill the void of something that isn't there, and to bring me back to neutrality because I'm so down here all the time. So I could have a day where I am hating life. If I've got stuff to do and I get out of bed, all it takes is me to get out of bed and I can do it. But that getting out of bed is so physically exhausting. And it's like, do I actually need to do that, or can I do that tomorrow? But tomorrow never comes. So as soon as my 2 feet get out of bed, I can do it, and no one will know that I'm having a bad day. But that is so exhausting that when I do get back into bed or I do come home, I go straight to my room and I don't do anything else for the rest of the day. I won't eat. I sometimes I won't even I can't even sleep. I'm that tired, if it makes sense. Like my head is just all over the place. But I think people think that people with depression can't give sustainable advice on situations because we have such a negative outlook on life. I've got a negative outlook on aspects of my life, but as a whole, I I can appreciate so much things about the world. Like the world's not the best place to live in at the moment, but there is so much good, and I can recognize that, and I can be a part of that. I don't see the world through like black tainted glasses and everything's shit and I hate everyone and like everyone shut the fuck up. It's not like that. I just have internal problems that I would never intentionally or intentionally project that onto other people's situations. I'd always try and give the most positive. And that's the thing, people can't take their own advice. Like I would give someone else with in the exact same position as me advice that I should probably take myself, but it's different because it's me and it's my situation. It's not the same. It's the same, but it's not the same. So listen to me, but I'll probably kill myself next week. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard. It's also I can find myself very detached. So sometimes I'll be like, am I even real? Like, why is everyone making such a big deal out of this? None of this is real. And I'll sit in bed and I'll be like, I'm not real. Like, this isn't happening. Like, who's to say that I have to stay and do this and work and do all of this? Like, why do I have to do that? None of this is all made up. And then you sit there for hours and you sound like some like conspiracy theorist, but you'll sit there for hours thinking none of this is real. Like, what is going on? Why am I? But I'll look at myself in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I'm actually like here and it's weird and it's not fair. I don't want to be here. But on the other hand, I do. So it's just a lot of like up and down, like trying to find a balance of, okay, how can I maneuver myself? I'm not a horrible person either. Like I don't want everyone else to stoop down to my low mood when I'm in a low mood. I love seeing my friends flourish and I love that they don't experience things that I experience. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But what I will say is it's made me so much more self-aware. I can analyze and like understand my feelings and why I feel certain things a lot more. Maybe it's because of like therapy sessions I've been through and they've encouraged me to break down what's actually happening. I've now relayed that onto situations with other people, in relationships, in friendships and everything. So it's made me a lot more emotionally intelligent as well. So I'll navigate myself a lot differently in situations that maybe I would when I didn't understand my mental illnesses. But yeah, I am very sensitive, but on the other side, very detached. It's very confusing, but I am glad of how emotionally intelligent it has made me, because I think like emotional intelligence is one of the most important things like a person can have. Like you can be great like logically and you can be so smart, but if you don't have emotional intelligence, it I couldn't imagine not having it, because there's so many situations in life where if you put that at the forefront, you can get to a situation where all the parties included, everyone is in the best possible situation. So I'm very self-aware, and I don't think people realize how much people with mental illnesses are self-aware, and we are very understanding of ourselves and other people because of our mental illnesses. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think as soon as you get that diagnosis, like it all clicks into place, and then you're like, right, I need to you constantly analyzing your every single action pretty much, and be like, and you're trying to separate, like, is this me or is this the disorder? And then you have to like, so yeah, definitely agree with that everyone once you've got that diagnosis, you are a lot more self-aware.
Yeah.
I think the compassion as well that we've all been talking about, like if you're quite sensitive and compassionate, you're thinking about why others do certain things, and then when you're around people who aren't very self-aware, who aren't really thinking about themselves or others or the effect that they have, or like their position in society, so I can find it quite difficult, like if someone's really unaware of how they're affecting other people or how other people affect them. I don't know, something I've realized recently. But yeah, how do you think society can improve on understanding and treating people with your mental illness, was the third question. My response is that, well, we all get like intrusive thoughts to different kind of extents, but everybody gets these thoughts that you don't choose, you don't control. So if we started talking about that more, like, you know, the kind of thought that's like, oh, imagine if I like steer off the road in your car, like if we start to talk about those kind of thoughts more, maybe they'd be less taboo to begin with. That's not to say that people with OCD their brain still wouldn't like react in this way. But yeah, like I think that if we acknowledged that, and our education system covered like mental illnesses in their actuality instead of leaving it down to like the media to cover them, and obviously finally like to properly fund mental health services. We're in such a bad situation with mental health services where, like, especially where we grew up, like people are on waiting lists for so long, people get forgotten about, letters get sent to the wrong place, and after suicide attempts a lot of people have ended up like being referred to some sort of psychiatrist and then never happening, and that's just a complete disregard for people's lives and livelihoods and their families, their friends, their loved ones, their communities. Like, it's shocking really. And yeah, we definitely need to properly fund mental health services so that people get the treatment they deserve. And yeah, it just seems so inhumane to me that we don't properly fund, or the government doesn't properly fund mental health services. And like, especially now, if this pandemic and like kind of world situation doesn't show that that's what we need moving forward, like I honestly don't know what will. So I really hope to see change coming. I guess that's why we do stuff like this, is to raise awareness, but really like we shouldn't have to, because it should be like already in place. But yeah, Tilly, what about you?
So I think, like you said, like being compassionate, I think to eradicate stigma, you need to start understanding people and being sensitive to other people. Like, they might do something that you think is fucking weird, but there is a reason that they're doing it. Like the amount of times where like I've been on a fucking downward spiral and I'm like, right, let's go to the pub and then let's not come home until 8 a.m. And everyone's like, oh, she's so annoying, like she's just doing that. And I'm like, I'm going off the rails, man. Like I need to do it. I don't want to go home. So I think like just general understanding and compassion, and like asking people why they're doing stuff if you think what they're doing is weird. Like just being like, hey, why did you not speak to me for 2 days? Have I done something to upset you? Or are you in a bad place? Or something like that. And yeah, I think like with mental health sort of awareness and things like that, there's a lot of reach out to your friends and like do this and blah blah blah. And it's like, first of all, my friends are not qualified psychiatrists. They cannot help me that much. Like, they can be there for me and they can be like, yeah, that's shit, but like they can't give me the actual help that I need, because I have quite a severe and serious disorder. So like they can't do that. They can't teach me to not be scared of abandonment. They can't stop my mood swings. Do you know what I mean? But also on that, I do think there should also be pressure on people reaching out to the person that they know with mental illness, because I found a lot that people will be like, oh yeah, she just gets like this. Like, she'll be fine. She'll be fine. This happens all the time. She'll be fine. And it's like, yeah, but what if I'm not fine? And like, what if I can't reach out to people because I think everyone hates me? Or like, I think I said this last time, I can't remember, but like there was a time when I got a bit psychotic and I was like, everyone is trying to kill me. Like, everyone is plotting to kill me. There are people outside my house trying to kill me. Like, if I'm in that sort of state, I can't reach out to my friends because they're trying to kill me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can't do it. So I do think like, yeah, just being a bit more understanding, compassionate. Because I think a lot of people tend to just put their guards up straight away with everyone, not just their friends or people with mental illness. They just do it in general. I think it's a natural state. Yeah, and then psychiatric stigma, like that needs to go, like I was saying before, because people don't get the support and the diagnosis that they need. And then, like you were saying about mental health services being funded, that's obviously a giant thing. That's top of the list of most important things, really. That just needs to happen, especially like, yeah, in North Wales. Like, I was on the waiting list for DBT for like fucking 4 years. Like, mate, that's so long. That's too long for me. I don't want to be waiting there that long. And then, yeah, finally, the last one, which is kind of, it's more of like a trope rather than like stigma, but I hate it when people think that borderline personality disorder means that you have multiple personalities and that you're some sort of like Norman Bates type weirdo who murderer that like fine one day and then the next day you're like this fucking nutter. Like, I just hate that. Obviously, like, dissociative identity disorder and BPD are very, very different, and having a personality disorder doesn't mean that you have more than one personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would definitely tell people to like look up dissociative identity disorder, because there's so much stigma around that as well.
Yeah.
And like recently I've been educating myself about it, and like that recent TV series Ratched, like it is quite like in some ways quite like, you know, visually good, and there's pros, but it's very problematic in its depictions of mental illness, especially DID. Like one character has what they called at the time multiple personality disorder and ends up like murdering everyone. Sorry, spoiler alert. But like, and it's really problematic because like obviously people with DID are more likely, like with BPD, like with all these things, to be the ones who are abused, not the abuser. Yeah. So I thought, you know, that was trending #1 on Netflix, and I was thinking, for such like, no media tends to cover mental illnesses. There's such a small percent of characters who have one. For them, the only show who does that, to make them be all like the murderers and the evil characters, is really problematic. So look up DID, like watch videos on it of people with it, like we are, but I don't personally know anyone with it. Like, I'm sure I do, because the percent of people is like more than OCD. It's like 1 to 3 people in 100. Just as many people as with ginger hair, like, you know, have got it, but it's not spoken about. So yeah, educate yourselves.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with that film Split. Do you remember that film?
Yeah. Oh my god, that's awful.
Awful. Which is heartbreaking because I really like James McAvoy. But like, yeah, it's just so bad. Like, they're not like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they just aren't like that. That's not real life. But yeah, BPD gets confused a lot with DID because they think personality disorder means multiple personalities, and multiple personalities means murderer. Of course.
But imagine if we thought that like two physical, like, I don't know, just two really well-known physical things, disabilities or, you know, illnesses, were the same. Like, we wouldn't, you know, we just wouldn't think that. So I think that shows how lack of understanding, awareness and education there is about mental illnesses, to think that two completely different things are the same. They're people's like lived realities, but we just conflate them for like, I don't know, it's just so bad.
It's like saying like having a broken arm and having a torn ligament in your leg are the same thing, like 100% the same. They are 100, and both of them make you a murderer. Like, that's what it's like.
Honestly, it's very like mental illness in the media. It's always like criminalizing, and then that's why it becomes such a red flag when you tell someone that you live with one of these illnesses. So personally, like, I always like get worried about in the future when I get a boyfriend, at what point do I tell them that I have anxiety and depression? Like, is that a red flag? Like, are they gonna think, oh fuck that? Like, it's seen as like baggage, when really, like, if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't know, because I'm a pro at hiding it by now. So it's very criminalizing, and I think the media does not help in destigmatizing mental illness at all. Like,
not at all.
Not at all, and that needs to change. Like, Phoebe, do you have any ideas about like how you'd like the people to treat, like people generally, and also like medical world, to treat people with anxiety and depression? Like, how do you see society improving in that way?
I think to be fair, our generation is getting a lot more aware and a lot more open to the idea of all these different mental illnesses. I would recommend, because we can't always count on the government, the media, the bigger like beings that control everything that we do. We can't always count on them to deliver a message that we need them to. So I would say for us, like regular people, like our generation, even if it's just properly familiarizing yourself with the definitions of these different mental illnesses, you don't need to go and read a book on every single one, but just know the difference between them, so you can identify maybe side effects or symptoms, or you can maybe identify it in a loved one, or just so you can just recognize it and it not be this big scary thing. It's just a thing that exists and that people have to live with. So consequently, you will have to live around it because it's all around us, whether you know it or not. So just familiarize yourself with the definitions of them, just so you can differentiate between them and you don't get mixed up with BPD and like multiple personality disorder or DID or anything like that, just to be more socially aware. I think with the whole reach out to your friends and everything, it is hard because there's a lot of guilt, I feel, that comes around with that. I've mentioned it to my friends so many times, but I feel like I'm the friend that there's always something going on. I'm always in some sort of situation, or I don't feel great all the time, or like I'm just that friend. It's all, and that the anxiety that gives me, it's like, oh, I don't want to say it because I said something last week, and I don't want to come across as if, oh my God, she's at it again. And I know that they would rather me speak about it than suffer in silence, but I don't want to be that friend that, like, when I ring you, you're looking at, oh, is it going to be a good conversation or a bad conversation? Like, I don't want that. So I get what you're saying. And yeah, our friends aren't qualified often enough. Sometimes they might make it worse. They might say something that doesn't validate your feelings at all. It does the complete opposite, and that's not their fault at all, but that's not their job. Obviously they can be a great support system. My friends are the most amazing support system I can ever wish for. Like, they'll do anything for me if I need it, but they're not going to cure what's going on. So it is hard as well, because in the medical field, it's not great. Like, the times that I've been manic and I've actually said, no, I need to go to the hospital right now. I need to speak to the crisis team right now. And that is a big step for me to be in mania and recognize that. That's great. Then I get there and it's like, am I going to have a nice nurse or a horrible one? And we shouldn't have to cross our fingers and be like, oh, I hope I get someone nice this time, not someone that, like, I remember once I went to the doctor's and she asked me to show him my scars. And I was like, right, okay, this is a bit weird. I was like, they're on my thighs. She was like, yeah, that's fine. Just take your trousers off. I was like, okay, it's a bit dehumanizing right now. So I took them off and she's like, oh, right, okay. They're not that deep, are they? I was like, oh, you know what? I'll tell you what. I was like, I'll tell you what, just for you, I'll do them deeper next time. You know, if that's what it takes for you to take me seriously, I have to cut myself deeper. See, it's the language that surrounds it. Like, your GP is a general practitioner, so they're not specialized in any specific sort of like sector. They're just taught to cover all bases. I don't want to walk into an office and be like, yeah, sorry, my scars aren't deep enough for you to take me seriously. Like, it's
so bad.
It's so bad.
That's the thing. Like, I think as a woman as well, or like a young woman, they just don't take you seriously in general.
No, the whole trope of like hysteria.
And like with the mental illness as well, they're like, nah, it's definitely this. That is definitely what it is.
Also, like with the, with what you were saying, Phoebe, about like it not being bad enough, like with scars, they're the same they treated me the same with like eating disorders, like it's a mental illness. But for so long, like especially where we live, I'd go to the doctors when my like eating disorders are bad, and they'd just be like, yeah, but you're not this and that, or you know, even when you are quite bad underweight, it's still like, well, you know, there's people who are worse, who are like, and it's just is really triggering, and it gives the wrong message that like you need to be even worse to yourself to get the help that you need. Like
100%. I think it trickles down into in the system as well, because I had a really bad experience with a chemist. I went to go pick up like my first round of prescription, and you know, sometimes when they're saying that the doctors didn't take it to the chemist, and I'm like, I don't care what they've said to you or what you've said to them. I've been told to come in to pick up my medication. Have you got it or not? And I walked in and I was like, yeah, I'm here to pick up this. They're saying no, the doctors haven't sent it, and I was like, well, it was a few days ago, and they've said that it's there, so I don't know. And they cutting me off, and then they realised what I was scribed for, and one of the women came out and she like whispered, she was like, yeah. I was like, I don't care whether it's antidepressants, paracetamol, or an asthma pump. If I've come here to pick up my medication, why can't you just be nice to me? And why does it take you to learn that it's antidepressants and you have to come up to me and feel like you have to whisper? It's fine. Just get me my tablets and let me go, because it was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced in my life. The whisper is not like I was having like violent diarrhea. It's just tablets to make me feel better. That's it. Like anything else, just like paracetamol, anything. Like just relax. Don't be a bitch. Like dealing with people with physical and mental ailments all day. You're a chemist. Like be nice. You don't know what people like. You don't know what people are going through. Do you know what I mean? It's a good thing I was having a good day on the day that I decided to go and pick them up. Because if I was having a bad day and they would have made me feel even shitter, who knows what could have happened? Who knows?
And I think like people aren't in all of these professions, like, you know, aren't like treated properly themselves, maybe not paid enough, all these different things. But what happens is like people end up being, like further stigmatizing people with mental illnesses. And I think it's like people might be thinking, oh, these are just like small events or like one thing that someone says, but it really does stop people wanting to reach out for help. And it's not about like walking on eggshells, it's just about like educating yourself, having a system really, like it's not always just our responsibility, that educates us, that properly funds these services, that properly pays the people who carry them out, and offers them support as well. And I just like it's definitely an institutional problem, and it shows up in so many cracks that like we're highlighting. I feel like it's quite like big change that we need. But finally, like what would each of us say, this was our last question, to like someone who has the mental illness that we have, like some general kind of advice, especially if they haven't had treatment or any help yet? For me, I would say like please don't suffer in silence. Like it's one of the scariest things to do, especially with OCD, to like go and get help. But you don't necessarily to your GP need to go into like all the thoughts. You can just have a list of the kind of things that OCD covers and what you're like experiencing, and that, you know, no one's entitled to your like trauma or your thoughts. But the point is that like the anxiety that kind of comes from them, you can get help for that. And there are cards you can take to your GP to like explain OCD and what treatment that is they're supposed to offer you. Your thoughts don't reflect you. I think that's a good one for everyone to know and just to like understand and remember. Obviously your active thoughts do, but your intrusive thoughts don't. And thoughts don't, actions do. OCD also will make you doubt that you have it. Like you'll doubt that you even have the disorder. Like I still have that from time to time, and it's been a while, like most of my life. So it will convince you that it's like you don't have it and you're just a bad person. That's the whole point of it. And that's like why it's called the doubting disease a lot of the time. Call OCD Action if you're struggling and you don't know how to go about the GP thing. They're brilliant and so like not stigmatizing. they're just what it's all about. And like educate yourself and people you trust, if you do trust people with it, and find community and other people to talk to and share with. Tilly, what about you?
I would say if you have BPD and you're in a state of kind of crisis, because we get into that state a lot, and you're very overwhelmed with your emotions, just do something, anything, just so small and comforting. So like make a cup of tea, just make a cup of tea. You don't even have to drink it, like just make it. And the act of doing it will sort of calm you down because you're focused on something, because it's so easy to sort of get like lost in these thoughts and you're like, oh my God, like I don't even know where to begin with this. So you just do something little like that, and then like put on a nice film or get some chocolate or anything small. I think that's always a good way to cope. It's just sort of distress tolerance skills, like just distract yourself and try and relax a little bit. And then I would say take mindfulness and meditation, stuff like that, very, very seriously. Like it really does help, even though you're going to think I'm a gimp, like it actually does. It makes a big difference. Like as soon as you start doing it for about 2 weeks, even like I just do 5 minutes a day, but like it makes me feel so much better. And it's because I've been doing it for quite a while now. If I am in a crisis spot, I can be like, right, and just sort of taught myself, do a bit of mindfulness and sort myself out. Medication as well. Don't be afraid to go on medication. It can be quite scary and the side effects do tend to be a bit grim. But I think the whole like, oh, it gets rid of your personality is a lie, like, or at least in my experience. I've been on so many different ones and they've all had their ups and downs. Like, obviously, why I've changed so many times, but I'm on one now, which is like fucking life-saving. Like, I would be, like, I wouldn't be able to cope without it pretty much. It's so fucking good. And it's just the same as taking any other medication for anything else. You don't need to be embarrassed by it. So I would definitely go down the route of trying to do that and like demanding that your psychiatrist or your GP takes you seriously, which is hard, but like I just think it's an important thing to do. It's a really alienating disorder. So I would try and seek out people who have it. If you're watching this and you know me, fucking slide in my DMs. I'll give you some playlists, I guess. I'll give you a virtual hug because we're in COVID times. But seriously, like that's an actual offer though. Like if anyone is watching it, like you can message me about it because I'll talk about it all fucking day, as we can see. But yeah, definitely try and seek out people who have it, because it can feel like you're the only person in the world with it. So I think that's really important. There is a guy called Joe Tracini who is a comedian on Twitter, and he was in Hollyoaks, and then he was a comedian, and now he just like does awareness videos for BPD, but they're really fucking funny, which is great because usually they're quite depressing. But he's hilarious. So look at his videos. He's great. He's wonderful. And then if all else fails, I would say just listen to a lot of Amy Winehouse. Like that's that's the way. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Phoebe?
I think first and foremost, like, don't be embarrassed or ashamed. Like, it's a real thing that happens to a lot of people, and it's just so happened that it's happening to you, and it's not fair. But a lot of things in life aren't. It's just about learning how to live with it. You might not feel like this forever. Some people do, and they just learn to live with it for all their lives. Some people are able to overcome it. You're not going to know which one of them you are unless you try and tackle it. You need to understand yourself. It's not always just about understanding your mental illness, it's understanding you as a person, because as much as it might be a big part of your life, it's not the thing that defines you. You have morals, you have things that you live by, you have friends and family that knew you and loved you way before you developed these illnesses, and they'll love you way after and during as well. So it's just about understanding yourself as a person. And yeah, just, I think I find it hard with, if someone messages me about oh, I'm feeling this way, that way, personally, as much as I hate to admit it, I really, really, really struggle with responding, because I don't always feel like I don't have the answer, because I'm still looking for it myself. And I don't want to sit there and speak about me when you're trying to tell me about you. So I'm not saying don't message me if you're feeling down, because I will respond, but it's just, it's so conflicting, and don't always feel pressure that because you experience something, you have to then fix everyone else. Because as much as we all want to be there for everyone, and we all want to pull together, like as a society, as a generation, it's not, it sounds horrible, but it's not your responsibility to fix other people, and that's okay. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But you shouldn't put any pressure on yourself just because you feel these things as well, to then go and fix other people, because we're not qualified either. We
No,
can give you advice, we can give you tips on how to deal with it, but you're not going to get the answers you need from someone else that is struggling. If it's someone that's overcome it, 100%, 100%. If it's someone in the family that knows someone that is in the medical health sector, and they're actually like good, and they do it for the right reasons, not just because they have to, 100% reach out to those people. But just remember, the more you understand about yourself, the better your journey and your process will be. And it's not always going to be easy at all, but it's not nothing to be ashamed of, honestly. And if people don't accept that of you, that's a red flag for you about them, because what else will they not accept in the long run? Because life comes at you fast, and as someone might say, oh no, fuck that, I don't want to be friends with her, I don't want to go out with her because she's got all of this baggage. Few years down the line, someone else, they might themselves be experiencing the same thing. Like, it all comes in different shapes and sizes at different times in people's lives. So just try not to internalize it too much. Just see it for what it is, and try and learn how to deal with it. It's not always easy. But yeah, like Tilly said, with like making yourself a cup of tea or doing comforting things, I used to get so frustrated when like doctors and people would say, when you feel like manic, go for a walk. I said, like, oh, fuck off, I'm not going for a walk. Why am I getting out of my bed, like where I'm warm? I might be crying and I might be hating life and not talking to anyone, but I'm warm, I'm in my bed. Like, where better in the world than my bed? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a thing that manifests itself a lot with me, is I feel like my bed is like the safest place in the world. And what I actually realized is, even yesterday, I was having a wank day yesterday, but I knew that I'd made plans to go on a dog walk with two of my closest friends, and I forced myself to go, and I felt so much better afterwards, like so much better, and I was a lot more productive that evening because I'd had that fresh air. Even if you don't get out of your drive, go outside, get some fresh air, open a window, something that's not just your own carbon dioxide in your room that you breathe in every day. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
it's the energy that's in your bedroom. Because if I showed someone my bedroom, like when I'm in my worst, it is disgusting. It's horrible. It's horrible. And as soon as you get that 1% of, I should clean my room, just do it, because you feel so much better. It might take you 6 hours, it might take you half an hour. Do it. And for as long as you can, try and be in the routine of, before I go to bed, I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that when I wake up, my room's tidy. Because if you open your eyes and you just see mess, you're like, yeah, I'm going to stay in this pit. And it's fine, because my room's a mess. So I'm not the only thing that's a mess in here, because this is me. But if you wake up and everywhere's tidy, like, oh, maybe I could do something today. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I could do that thing that I said I was going to do yesterday. So yeah, just little things like that. Just understand yourself a bit more and make your environment a lot more comfortable for yourself. That's what I'd recommend anyway.
Definitely, no, it's really good recommendations, because I think especially as people who with mental illnesses, like I think we just have to, like anyone watching with it, like we kind of have to find those ways of, like, you know, yeah, staying alive and being as well as we can be and as happy as we can be, like because I think it's not just a given, and I think that's where it becomes like a disability, is that, like, maybe, I don't know, I've never been anyone else's mind, but maybe some people can just go about their day and not have these like plaguing thoughts or situations or emotions, but like for us that's the reality, and it makes everything quite difficult at times and exhausting. But like putting those things in your day, like for me I have to go outside and like be outside, even if it's just a little walk, for mindfulness as well, like Tilly said, like putting a even like a 10-minute a day actually changes the way I view thoughts, because mindfulness is always about that like space between you and your thoughts and kind of becoming less critical of them. So it might be harder for people with mental illnesses to sit down and do that, especially because of what will come up, but it's like the most valuable for us, I think. And yeah, like Tilly mentioned, like a comedian, for OCD there's a program called Pure, like about like more Puro, it's nickname for like the intrusive side and the invisible convulsion side. But I think, yeah, just doing these little things in your day, they might sound small, but especially because the system is quite broken, like while you're waiting for that to be fixed and like for the things you need, it's putting those things in your daily life.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I feel like as it sounds quite like just be happy, but like you do, it gets to a point where you do kind of have to make a choice where you're like, am I going to sit in bed and wallow, or am I just going to fucking go outside for 5 minutes and go for a walk? And like at first it does feel shit, like you do still feel shit, but it's just something you have to keep doing, because it's kind of like you feel shit, but you feel worse if you just stay in bed. And like same with mindfulness, it's like, listen, I've got really bad problems. Mindfulness isn't going to help me, but it's just 5 minutes of peace. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it gets to a point where you have to make a choice where instead of rejecting all of these ideas that you think are shit that won't cure you, you kind of just have to try, because it makes life a tiny, tiny bit easier, a tiny bit. So
I think
Yeah.
especially like thing like about like nature and like mindfulness and like spirituality and things like that. It's I know everyone doesn't always believe in it. I'm not the first to want to go on a hike. You know what I mean? But it like stuff like that makes sense. If it's not man-made, it makes sense because it's there for a purpose. So
yeah,
fresh air is going to do so much more for you than you think, because it's there for a purpose. It's called fresh air for a reason. Do you know what I mean? It's going to give you, like Tilly said, that 5 minutes of peace. So if that's sitting in your garden for 5 minutes, do it. And if you want to get back into bed after that, do it. But then you can say, I was feeling shit, but I did something to try and get myself
yeah,
out of that. It might not have got me out of it today, but it's just little things that you can say, oh, I did that, instead of, oh, yesterday I spent the whole day in bed. Which if you want to do once in a while, that's fine. But when it becomes a habit,
yeah,
it's when the people around you start to be like, right, okay, we understand that you have all of this thing, but what are we going to do about it now? Like, we need to get the ball rolling. And that can sometimes seem like an attack, because it's like, well, just leave me, I'm in my bed, I'm happy, but you're not. So yeah, just go make yourself a cup of tea. Cooking is another great one. I love, if I'm in the mood to cook, I will cook for a whole village. Honestly, get into it. If you're not the kind to cook or whatever, just try like a few recipes. Once you master that recipe, and invite your friends over, cook that for them and see how happy it makes you to see them enjoying something that you've done. It's like little things like that. Like, what can I do? That might not seem like a big thing, but mastering a recipe and then cooking it and feeding it to people that you love, it honestly,
yeah. It's such a good feeling.
such a good feeling.
Okay, so yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you've learned something, and yeah, happy Mental Health Awareness Day.
Woo!
Yay!